podcast. This is Catherine Oaks, your host. And today I have the pleasure to have with me Keegan LaMar. When Keegan is the CEO of Taylor Technologies and he's also the owner of LaMar Coaching. Hello, Keegan. How are you doing today?
I appreciate it, Catherine. It's good to see you again, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, wonderful. So wonderful to have you. I can't wait for you to share your stories and what you're doing with your companies and why you started your companies. So maybe let's start this. If you can give us a little bit of a background as to who you are, some of
Sure.
your background, and then talk about the vision, the mission of your companies. What's the big goal here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a little bit about my background. I was depending on where people are listening this to, I was an American football, college football player at the University of Colorado. So I played sports for the majority of my life. And then after that, I've spent roughly the last decade of my life in technology. That includes working with Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, and eventually starting my own technology company. And roughly, roughly a decade ago, as well as when I started doing coaching. And the reason I went into coaching, a lot of people, there's a lot of different versions of coaching out there. There's life coaching, there's health coaching, there's, grief coaching, there's coaching for pretty much anything, right? And it just depends on, what people want to try and specialize in and what people want to try and focus on. And where I focused had a lot to do with my background because I was an athlete who really struggled with the reality of being in an arena where you have to perform at your absolute best pretty much any day, like every single day, and you had to be on all the time. I struggled with that because it's an unrealistic thing. Roughly 30% of the time you could probably be in that area. The other 70% is trying to figure out how to get back into that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled with that a lot. And so I originally, coming out of college, wanted to figure things out for myself and figure out why I struggled so much, why it felt like I couldn't get in the zone, when I was in it, it seemed like it was fleeting, and all these different parts. So I originally got into coaching to figure my own world out. And I went and I got certified through the International Coaching Federation as a certified professional coach. And then I went and got a license specifically as a performance mindset coach to help executives and athletes. And so for roughly the past decade, I have been working with executives, athletes, business people in general, helping them on their mindset journey, right? We're all going through this, and I constantly am trying to figure things out in my world as I keep shaking things up.
Yeah.
I recently just had my third child, and so I'm using some of my coaching to get myself, through this period of change yet again. Because not only is this our third child, so our family's is bigger than ever, but I'm also doing more than I ever have from
Mm-hmm.
a business perspective. So it's just a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm constantly always using it, and it's one of those things where if you obsess over anything, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you're doing, if you obsess over anything, you're probably going to deal with it more than most other people. And
Yep.
so, mindset and understanding how the brain works and how decision processes work. I obsess over it. So of course I deal with a lot of it
Yep.
on a daily basis. So anybody who's a coach who looks like they have their entire lives together, I usually tell people to be wary of. It's the coaches who are open and honest about the fact that they deal with this stuff. And they say, I used to, lose my mind and I'd be done for like 2, 3 weeks. And now it takes 2 to 3 hours for me to get through a pretty tough moment. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
people who are really, really good at working with. Obviously, you have to be a good fit with them, but obviously, those types of people, when they're open and honest about it, you know that they're going through it with you. They're not just some perfect
Right.
person who's unrelatable. Most people want to, work with somebody or believe in someone who they see pieces of themselves in,
Yeah.
and say, this person gets me. So
Yeah.
I'm very open, honest, transparent about a lot of that stuff whenever I'm working with any athlete, whether they're a professional athlete or an amateur athlete or any business person. But
Mhm.
that's a little bit about my story. And I'm sure we'll probably dive into a whole lot
Oh,
more.
we will, and that's fascinating. The one thing I've learned, and you just mentioned that, it's very often for me anyway. It's through the clutter that you learn to see the light, or that you often discover something that you had not thought about before, because you were placed in a position where you were forced to uncover something new that you did not go through before. And the more you learn to uncover that new thing or that light, the faster you are able to actually do it, and that takes practice. You talked about perspective, mindset. All of this is also having the awareness of being able to do that, being able to apply those principles, the knowledge that you have about all of this, so that you actually can change your life, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we've all been through it, right? I mean, you've been through plenty of moments where, what is the old phrase? Necessity is the mother of all invention.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've all been
Yeah.
in that state before. And whether it's, with you and any of the endeavors that you've been through, or, any parent out there who's had kids
Yeah.
and has woken up someday and has just been like, holy crap, how am I going to make this work? That feeling of something changing in your world, and now you have to change other things, right? It's just when some change occurs, whether you lose a job, you get a new job, you start a relationship with somebody, you end a relationship with somebody, you have a kid, anything, right? Something changes, and it's the first domino that gets pushed over. It's going to have to knock over other dominoes because your world has technically changed a little bit, and now you have to make other changes so that there's a new normal.
Yeah.
And this is something that took me a long time to understand. I was the kind of person who's like, this is how I've always done stuff. I always, put my pants on this way, or I always, this is my morning routine, or these are these other things. Then you have a kid and you're just like, I can't do any of that anymore.
Mm.
Everything has changed. And
Yeah.
now, oh my gosh, do I just sit in this place of, well, now everything I've known is just ruined, or, oh no, I got to do something different and I need to create a new normal. And
Yeah.
the reality of it is, almost anybody who's probably listening to this, or most kids, or most adults, at one point when they were kids, they played some kind of sport. And
Mm-hmm.
at one point, you had never played sports before, and it was the first time you ever walked out there. So
Mm-hmm.
you had no clue how you were going to navigate any of it,
Yeah.
but you just took action. You just went out there, and whether you sat and picked dandelions, or you ran around having no clue what to do, or you figured it out pretty quickly and understood kind of what the objective of being out there and playing whatever sport it was
Yeah.
actually is. Everybody starts somewhere. There is no secret formula to being amazing. It is just that your confidence level in doing something has everything to do with your competence level, right? Which, so confidence equals competence, and competence comes from just practice. The more
Mm-hmm.
you do something, right? Like this podcast. I know we had talked before this a little bit about how I've done a podcast in the past and did over 100 episodes. And the first 30 I listened back to some of them. I was like, man, I stunk. I was terrible. This was
Yeah.
not great. But I had to do that if I was going to get to a place
Yeah.
where every time I released an episode, people would start sending me comments and compliments and, oh my gosh, this is really great. And do you mind if I share this and do all these different things? I would have never gotten there in any way, shape, or form
Yeah.
if I hadn't gotten through those first 30 episodes, just getting reps.
Yeah.
And so if people want to say, everybody says all the time, I'm a very practical coach, right? When I work with people, people are like, well, just manifest stuff. And I'm like, manifesting things really is neat. When you take action, you actually go and do something, it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants confidence.
I don't need to interrupt you, but let's stop there because I think that's really important. Everybody hears you need to be more confident. So the question I'm getting a lot is, okay, that's great. That sounds wonderful. How do I get there? How do I do that? So what do you say to people who are asking you this question, Keegan? Because it's a challenge.
I would ask a couple questions. Because everybody's got different definitions. I'd say first and foremost, what the hell does confident even mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody says, I want to be confident, you have to define it.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody has you may have the same definition as most people, and you may not. And if you have no clue what you're actually trying to obtain, then you're never going to get there. There are people who say, I want success. Cool. Yeah. What does that look like to you? And if they're like, it's money. All right. What does being in that space actually even mean to you? Because money's not just going to pop out of thin air. Like, what does confidence mean to you? It's not going to just pop out of thin air. However, confidence in itself is a discipline, meaning it's something you can take action towards. There's a lot of different high-performing disciplines like self-awareness, conscious choice, being fearless, because people talk about, I want to be fearless, I want to do certain things. Confidence is one of them.
Yeah.
And confidence as an action is being able to continually practice something, because the more you do something, the more confident you will be with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, I want to become more confident, number one, I always say, what does it mean to you? Because when I say confidence means you have to be willing to practice something, they, meaning whoever wants confidence, has to define what they want to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. What do you want to apply confidence to? What are things you're confident in now?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can take what you've done, right? For me, I was a college athlete. At one point I'd be like, I'm really confident in playing sports. And they'd say, why? And I'd be like, because I've played sports my whole life.
Right.
And I feel confident that I could walk into like on a basketball court or on a tennis court or, on beach volleyball or this or that. And I may not have a ton of experience with it, but I'm athletic enough and I've done enough athletic things where I know I'll be able to hold my own.
Right.
And then I can just go have fun with it.
Yeah.
Same thing goes in business and relationships and all these different things.
Yeah.
So you have to define what confidence is for you. You have to define what you want confidence in. You have to define and understand what you've done in the past that you're confident in now, and say, oh yeah, more often than not, all these things that I am confident in, it's because I've been doing it for 3, 4, 5 years. And I've been present with it.
Yep.
And, like me in podcasting, I've done 30 episodes of this. I can start to actually relax and unclench my butt a little bit and have a normal conversation with people.
And that's what it is. And the one thing that I have learned myself too is when I have self-doubt, which happens to me regularly, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of people.
Sure.
The way for me to deal with this is, like you mentioned, is take action. Or look at everything I've done in the past and I realize, oh my God, that's not so bad. And the one thing that's very dangerous that a lot of people do too, they compare themselves to others. And that's very dangerous too, because everybody is different. Everybody has a different path. Everybody has different qualities and challenges. So the one thing I have stopped doing is that I do not compare myself to anyone, because it's just irrelevant. It is not factual. It's an emotional state that you put yourself in that's negative, that can only bring about more negative into your state of mind, because that adds to the lack of self-confidence. It adds to the lack of anything that can propel you into something good in the future. So,
sure. And I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you don't compare yourself to other people. Is there anything that you do compare yourself to in any way, shape, or form to give you a sense of progression in general?
Well, for me, what's really important is to feel I'm making a difference. And I don't think I compare myself, but I'm going to look at some people that I admire. So it's not comparing myself, it's looking at those people that I admire and what they are doing and how they've done it, and use them as an example. because that gives me the drive to do certain things maybe I would not have done. That gives me ideas also on how to do certain things that maybe I would not have known how to do. So that's more of my route now, is that.
I
And
like that.
that pushes me forward in a positive light.
I like that. So from what I'm hearing, it's that you are comparing actions.
Yeah.
So in general, habits and decision making, right? You're looking at people you admire and you're saying, am I taking the types of actions that maybe they are?
Right.
Or if they can do this, I inherently should also be able to do this without a sense of fear going into it. So you're almost comparing this mindset of general discipline, which I think is actually really good. I think there's a lot of people out there that, because you look at role modeling, it's the phrase for a lot of people sometimes is fake it till you make it. Find somebody who you really like and then act like them until things start going really well. Fake it till you make it. In the coaching world, there's a definition for it. It's called role modeling. And what it essentially is, hey, somebody wants to go be really good in XYZ career. Find someone who's performing really well in that path. I think there's a lot of people who are in marketing and strategy and other stuff like that who may look up to someone like Gary Vaynerchuk because he's huge in the social media space. And so they use him. A lot of people want to use him as a role model. Because there's one undeniable thing that he does, which is take action all the time.
All the time. He's present
all
everywhere.
The time.
And he's so positive and fun. And he's authentic. He's real. I love
He's
Gary Vaynerchuk.
He's very transparent. He gives it to you
example.
Straight.
I know.
Absolutely.
And I love this because everything is so fake nowadays. When you have someone that has the guts to be authentic, you have to have the courage to do that.
Sure.
Because otherwise you say, hey, I want to do like everybody else this way. I don't stand out. I don't take risks. I think you have to take risks. You can take limited risks, but you have to take risks. You have to have the guts to be yourself. Yeah. And I know it's hard, especially when you work for someone or you're the representative of a company, then there are things that you cannot do.
Yeah.
Because you always think about the company's brand. You don't want to damage the brand. But that's something also that comes from the executive leadership of those companies. I think it's important for leaders to give some space to your employees to be real, to be authentic, to share a message that has value and that is not molded in the same mold that everybody uses, because this doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, and you brought up something really interesting. You brought up a few things that I think are really, really interesting. Most people, when I wind up having conversations with them, there's one of two things, or maybe both of these things that I wind up having a conversation with them at some point. We talked about, I want to be confident when I go and do something. And usually that comes up when they're wanting to try and step out of their comfort zone. And they're like, well, I want to go and I want to be confident raising capital. I want to be confident building this business. I want to be confident in creating my own business. I want to go whatever, right? The second one is authenticity. How do I be authentic? And I think it's a really interesting conversation because you can be authentic. However, if your version of I'm just being me has some traits that may not serve you or your team well, then it's not that you can't be authentic. It's that you have to have the self-awareness to understand your traits.
Yeah.
Think of yourself as a coach, right? You're a coach in a basketball game. And I say basketball game because you substitute people all the time. You have a 12-person team. You can only have 5 people out on the court. Think of your 12-person team as 12 different traits of you as a leader. You can only pick 5. What are the 5 that serve you the best for the scenario right now to help the overall team?
I like that. Yeah.
Complete the goal that they're trying to set out for.
Right.
Because I know people who are like, I'm just being me. And it's like, I hate to say it, but you're an asshole.
Yeah. But you're right. You have to think about your environment. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And if you're causing your team to be in a position where they're just like, I don't like this guy. Yeah. He is rude. He is this, or she, right? He or she is this and this and this. It means what you're doing more often than not, is you are exuding the traits of a high performing individual versus being a high performing leader. Two completely different things.
Very
right?
different.
We all know that salesperson who sells $10 million, and hits their numbers and they make amazing commission. Like they're making, 3, 4, 500K minimum a year, but nobody else on the team likes them. But they're the best performer on the team and they're a toxic performer sometimes.
Yeah.
If you put that person in a leadership position, the whole team is going to crumble.
Yeah, so true.
Because you can be a very high performing individual contributor and be a terrible leader. And you could also, vice versa, be a terrible individual contributor and be an impeccable leader. It comes down to your ability to be aware of the different parts of you and understand what works for the scenario that you are in. And this starts getting into the whole sense of, well, okay, how do I know what to bundle certain traits into and call them forth when I'm doing this or this or this? You start getting into a version of alter ego work, which is like giving a persona of yourself. Hey, when I go and do this, these are the things that I call forth and I don't have to think about it anymore because I've bundled it into this way that I think about myself. And that's not fake. It's like you couldn't act something out your brain doesn't believe you can actually do. So alter ego just literally means other self. So you're doing work on taking traits of yourself that are already internal and just bundling them together. But that's a whole nother conversation.
No, but that's important what you're saying. You're right. You have to consider your environment. If you are within a team, you have to consider your team and of course adjust as need be, but you cannot just think about yourself. So I'm glad you pointed it out. I think it's very important. So Keegan, there's a lot of things that I'm speaking with a lot of people, but a lot of the youth now is telling me, or they seem anyway, to be challenging with finding their purpose. I hear that a lot. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm not sure there's a good future ahead of us. There's a depression that's happening. I'm seeing in a lot of people right now that they don't know how to handle. So what advice would you give to people who say things like that?
Yeah. Number one, right, we're assuming most of these people are young people. The human brain doesn't develop fully until you're in your mid-20s. So first and foremost, you don't know what your purpose is. Because anybody who might be listening to this who's either in college or fresh out of college, how many of you even understand what tomorrow looks like to a T? Everything you're going to do that day. There's still things that you're waking up and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do today completely. Let alone a week, a month, a year. Oh, my ultimate purpose here on earth. There are people who spend their entire lives figuring out their purpose. I think what a lot of people are looking for is a sense of fulfillment rather than a sense of purpose. Because a purpose, right, the thought of, well, this is my purpose, is you figuring out what you have been put on this earth to do. And that goes into a sense of faith. Do you believe, are you a religious person? Do you believe that God has an intended plan for you? In that case, if you are a religious person, here's a hot tip. God's plans for you is something you will never know. Because if you try and understand what God already knows, you are surely off the mark all the time when you try and say, oh, I know what God wants.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Right? We can only attempt to try and fathom the whole entire expanse of creation and all these other things. Now, obviously, if you're not religious, then you are trying to guess why the universe has put you in the universe where you're at with the parents you have, in the society that you're in this particular time period. Yeah, good luck trying to figure out your purpose.
Right.
And people, the reason is why people want a sense of stability. Everybody wants stability. The ultimate sense of stability is knowing exactly your purpose. Because then you're like, I know everything I have to know now. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. I know exactly why I'm supposed to do it. And now nothing is really exciting anymore because there's nothing to discover at that point.
Right, right.
So everybody wants to try and figure out purpose. I would say knock it off. First and foremost, number one, you will never get there, just like perfection. You will never get there. Perfection doesn't exist. We are human beings, therefore we are not perfect. No human being is perfect. It doesn't exist. Stop chasing perfection. Chase discipline. Chase self-mastery, which means you understand and work with everything that's inside of you, everything that you've been given, everything you're chasing, and understanding relationships, your sense of faith, self-education, discipline, all these different things. You know how to pull levers. So I would say don't chase purpose, chase fulfillment. Okay. AKA, when you do something, what are the actions that you do that make you feel like you are being of use to other people? Because there's no better feeling than the sense of doing something for somebody else and they look at you and say, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for doing this. Right, there's such a beautiful exchange that occurs within that. And this is something that every leader has to figure out if they're leading a company, because your goal, right, you think, well, we're providing products and services to our customers and everybody here works for me. No, not one bit. Everybody who works at the company you've created has chosen to take a bet that you will put them in a position to be successful and use their talents and skills in an appropriate manner for them to be successful in completing certain things. And you as the leader see the individual pieces and know how to put them together to create something bigger than the parts that provide value to the marketplace.
Yeah, very important.
But most leaders don't necessarily get there. So if you're a young person, chase fulfillment, chase being useful, which finding that stuff literally means ask people how you can help. Look at the market, look at I'd say look at social media, but more often than not, you look at social media and you see people who already somehow they're like, oh, I've figured out life. Here's a hack.
They look like it. They don't have it, but they look like it, right? That's what it is.
Well, and there's examples all the time of people literally going and like into a private jet hangar and they're like, I'm just on my jet. And they're like, it's not theirs. Like someone just let them take a picture on it.
Right.
So most of what you see is just people showing I bet you want this. If you want this, you should buy these things from me because I actually would like this in reality, but I can't. So I have to pretend, and that's not being fulfilled.
It's not. And those people typically I stay away from, because if I'm that successful, I don't think I would have the need to put it out there constantly. I think people that are really successful and that are smart, they don't do that, because that creates envy, and that's a negative feeling that you don't want to have. But that's what social media does, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I mean, money can buy you a jet ski, and I rarely find somebody who is unhappy on a jet ski.
Yeah.
But at some point, if you are not doing something for somebody else, the jet ski is going to get pretty boring. If you only have money and things, it doesn't buy you fulfillment. It doesn't buy you a sense of being useful. And those are honestly some of the highest honors that human beings can have. Is
I agree.
When somebody looks at them and they say, in a sense, this person was incredibly useful to others. They helped other people out. They were kind to other people. They were loving to other people. They were there for them. When you can contribute, people find incredible value within you. And people who are seen as incredibly valuable usually have a lot of monetary value that they can very easily push and pull into their life. It's the people who chase value, who chase money and monetary things, who usually wind up being short and are not useful to other people. They're like, oh, this person's a scammer. This person is a this person is a that, because you're trying to fool people. I usually use this type of analogy. Imagine you're on a highway and there are different stops on the highway. There's a stop for, relationship. There's a stop for having some money. There's a stop for a house. There's a stop for all these other things. And you don't know how far down the road you potentially get all of that, right? Some of them may have combos, other things like that. Do you think I'm going to get off on the, I want to find a way to get off on the third exit? Or do you think I'm going to learn how to become the best driver and learn how to stick the path? Which one do you think would be more successful? The person who tries to shoot for a specific exit, or the person who says, I'm going to find a way to always continue to improve myself in order to keep driving? Mm-hmm. Usually the person who focuses on themselves, which is self-mastery. When you can focus on self-mastery and all these different parts of ourselves that we can share with the world around us, rather than I want to obtain a specific thing, that person's always going to be more successful. So
and happier. That person will be happier.
Control it.
Yeah.
I mean, heaven forbid we focus on stuff that we would like to control, which is hard enough for a lot of people to try and grasp. Is, hey, hard work is something you can control, because it's, you pick something of what you're going to do and then you control how you do it.
Yeah. And that's important. So, I mean, you said a lot of very important things here that I hope people remember. The one thing that I know is, for me anyway, what I recommend people when they tell me something like this, I say, first of all, do you do what you love? What is it you love doing? What do you have passion for? Because when you have passion for someone, it shows. I mean, you share it without even knowing it, right? It's contagious. Passion is contagious. So what is your passion? Yeah. And then if you're depressed, very often it's because you're too focused on yourself. For me, when I get depressed, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the Humane Society and walk dogs that need to be walked. Or I'm going to go to a place where you have homeless people and I'm going to give them something. It's when you start getting outside of your own needs sometimes and you take care of something else, that brings joy. And that's good karma, that's positive feelings that you're going to share with something. And whenever I do this, I feel better. Somehow my depression is collapsing, is disappearing. I don't feel it anymore. So that's very important. Find your passion, find a way to help others by doing your passion, because there are many ways to do it. And get outside of yourself once in a while, because there's a big world out there that you can influence. No matter what you do, there's always a way to positively influence the world that is around you. It doesn't need to be global, just on a local basis.
And those are very high level concepts, right? That you're engaging in, the sense of entrainment that you're engaging with, where, entrainment, very quick, brief definition, is when two objects are near each other, they start to resonate at the same frequency, which means one resonates with the other, like one of them moves and one of them doesn't move. A great way to think about this is if you've ever been at someone's speech or something like that, and like they did a great job and people start clapping. If people clap long enough, everybody will clap in unison. They didn't plan it.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
Yeah.
People are metronomes with each other. And so when you are around higher resonating level of energy things, you will start to feel a pull of resonating at that level. So for you, when you can go and be of service to other people, and they're saying, you know what, like, and you might be feeling really down on yourself, but someone says, thank you, I appreciate you, you're an amazing person, blah, blah, blah. Like, you hear this stuff and you are being of service to somebody else, you can't help but start to join them in this belief that you're a good person.
Right.
And you start to look at yourself as a good person. You're like, you know what? I'm proud of myself for doing this. Another way of doing it, which I call them gratitude texts. Go through, like, anytime you're not feeling great, go through your phone, go through your contacts list, because everybody has their phone within 2 feet of them at all times. Just go through your contacts list, wait for a name that pops out. When you see a name that pops out, send them a text and just say, I'm grateful for you. And give them a specific reason. When we did this and all these other things, and I was thinking about this, and, I'm just grateful for you. I hope you're doing well. I love you. I appreciate you. I guarantee you're going to be met with something amazing in return. Yeah. And I do this with my wife every once in a while, out of the blue. It reminds me of how much we love and appreciate each other, because we both are here for our kids and working and doing all this other stuff. And when we can take those moments to just appreciate each other, it changes everything. And when I do this with, friends or family or people I haven't talked to in a long time, it just changes everything. And it raises your level of energy so that you can operate at a higher level. You remove some of those horse blinders. You get to be more creative, because now your mind is open, because you're not dealing with negative energy kind of forcing you to not be able to see different opportunities. So the fact that you're doing it says a ton about you, and because that's a very high level concept for a lot of people to ultimately get to, which shows you've put in the work and you have the self-awareness about yourself of, I'm not doing great right now. I need to go and do one of these 10 activities because I know they raise my level of energy. And I would say anybody who's listening to this should absolutely also do the same thing. Take the time to understand, number one, and this goes into neuro-linguistic programming a little bit. Number one, find whatever the trigger is that's causing you to change a state. This could be good or bad. If you're doing something and you're like, I'm experiencing a true sense of joy right now, take note of it and say, what am I doing right now that is causing me to feel this way? It could be an act of kindness. It could be, going and getting activity in. It could be sitting and literally smiling for like a minute straight. There's a physiological response where if you're smiling for a minute, your brain is like, release dopamine. Like it just happens because it knows the trigger.
True.
And so you figure out the trigger and what is your normal response. And this could also be good or bad. Hey, I do this and I usually feel good. Or when this happens, I usually feel pretty crappy.
Right.
Then the neuro-linguistic programming, aka neuroplasticity of like rewiring your brain, where it comes in is, how do you want to interrupt it? If you do something and it gives you an undesirable outcome or feeling, what you have to do is either do the work yourself or work with somebody else to rewire and recondition the response to whatever the trigger is that's causing you to not feel great. And there are a lot of different ways to do this. There are some really good ones where something bad happens, and there's a guy named Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL and just overall badass dude. And his whole thing is whenever he was told anything, his response would be good.
I heard that.
They're like, hey, normal, the mission that we had, here was our plan. Looks like we're not going to be able to do that anymore. And he would say, good.
Yeah.
And he would say, what's the new scenario? And it's such a interesting thing to be able to replace whatever action is going on, to replace it with good, because what that does is it tells your brain, okay, what does good mean to me? Good means I'm okay with this and there's an opportunity here. It's usually when somebody says, all right, good, because it just means opportunity is among us.
I love this.
So it's a very simple way of if somebody's like, well, how do I change my response? That's one way to do it, because if you say good or you just open yourself up a little bit, you understand that there's opportunities within it. And then things start to not be able to rattle you as quickly.
And it does something physiologically, right? I mean, it has a direct impact on your brain. That's been scientifically proven. So that's really important. What you just said, such great advice. Thank you for sharing this. That's so important. So one question I'd like to ask you, one of the last questions I'd like to ask you is, we are now getting into a world of AI. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. People are scared that we're going to become robots. And I think now is the time to really emphasize the fact that we are human and show our humanity more. I don't see AI as a threat. I see AI as another tool that that is available to us, that we have the choice. We can determine whether we want to use it positively or negatively, just like any other tool out there. Social media can be positive, social media can be negative. What do you choose? So if you don't mind talking about that, Keegan, is that we are humans. Let's bring back our humanity. Let's develop that consciousness, or maybe increase our level of consciousness on that very topic, because I think it's going to become more and more challenged going forward.
Sure, absolutely. And coming from somebody who operates in a technology space, I think this is a good conversation, right? I agree, AI is absolutely a tool. It can make people do their work better, faster, easier, not have to overthink stuff. And there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, it's going to take over, my job because it's going to take over my whole sales team." People are getting, and that's with the assumption that people can't tell when an automated intelligence is trying to contact them via phone. I can't be the only one who receives a phone call and you give a response and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, this is a pre-recording," or, "Oh, this is an AI." And you're like, "No, I'm not going to," and you just hang up your phone.
Yeah.
People are smart. Dogs are not the only thing that can smell when something is up. And human beings have the capacity to be like, something's not right here.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you there are very few human beings out there who are like, "I don't want a person to call me. I can't wait to pick up the phone and hear an automated message and I'm going to give that thing my credit card immediately." No, it doesn't work like that. People spend money on things that they trust and need, which means we are going to get to a point where artificial intelligence prepares people more for better conversation and better communication. And that's not to say it's not important to have potentially an AI chatbot on your website that you've uploaded with all the information about your business so that someone can get a quick answer and they don't have to call and wait in line. But it is to say that when somebody needs help or wants help, they want to talk to a human being, because just in full circle, back to the very beginning, people want to work with someone who they see a little bit of themselves in.
True.
And when you can hear, like when you pick up the phone and you hear another human being's voice, and honestly, maybe you hear someone's whose voice sounds like yours. Maybe you hear someone's voice who doesn't sound like yours. Trust has to be part of it, right? If you pick up the phone and someone has like a crazy, like an accent that is nowhere near, the US or something, like, let's say it's a US based company, and I'm not trying to cause problems here, but it's, if you pick up the phone and you hear somebody with like a heavy accent and they say their name is like Bob, and you're like, "There's no way your name is Bob."
Yeah.
Like there has to be human trust. And they may have all the information they could ever need, but people know when a real human being is there and wants to have a real conversation with them, because this is how it's been for a very long time. Artificial intelligence is not going to take away human connection, and artificial intelligence cannot force people to spend money.
True. That's very true. Yeah, that's
so,
very true.
So humans have to be a part of the process. And humans also have to be educated and understand who their customers are, what they need, why they may need it. Humans have to understand and perfect the relationship. They don't have to perfect the sales pitch. They have to perfect relationships.
That's
When you
the
can
key
do
word.
that, selling becomes super easy.
It is.
You make the most powerful marketing tool, all of existence, is a recommendation from a friend. "Hey, I'm thinking of starting my own business." And they're just like, and you're like, "I need a work computer." And they're like, "Oh, what kind of computer are you thinking?" And you're like, "I don't know. Like, I need something that can do this. And your friend immediately says, "You should look at this MacBook, right? Or this Windows laptop. Or you should get a custom PC if you're going to be doing this." Your question is why? And then they say, well, I heard you say that you need this, and I have experience working with these, and it does this, 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 and I love it. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to look into it because you've taken the time to look into it. You know what you're talking about. I trust you. I know you're not making a commission off of this.
Yeah.
You just want someone, like, you genuinely care that I make a good decision for myself and my business and what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, but that's so
powerful
true.
Tool.
That's so true. Third-party testimonials or referrals, it's always the best.
AI can't replace that.
No, AI won't. That is very true. So then the last thing I'd like to ask you is, people say the world is crazy, it's challenging, everything is challenging. And my answer is, the world has always been crazy and challenging. It's just part of evolution, right? Yes. We need to understand that and not think, hey, what we're living right now, it's never happened before. I don't know how I'm going to handle this, yada, 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 yada. So it's a very negative positioning on everything that's happening right now, because there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. The elections are not helping. So people are just wondering, what am I going to do with all of this? So what is the last advice that you would give right now to someone who is feeling unstable, anxious, not sure about the future, not sure about how to evolve in this crazy world? What would you say?
Yeah, I would say everything you've ever wanted to do and anything that you've ever wanted to be can be broken down and be made very simple as to how to get it. Your performance in anything that you do, which think of it as the results of whatever you're trying to accomplish. Your performance equals your potential to get that thing minus distractions. Performance equals potential minus distractions. Your potential is everything you know, everything you're working on, everything you've ever done, your experience, all of your relationships, all of your tools that you're using, so on and so forth. More often than not, think of Gary Vaynerchuk when he says, make 80 pieces of content a day. Do people have the potential to make 80 pieces of content a day? Yeah, they absolutely do. Mm-hmm. So what gets in the way? What gets in the way are a very few number of things that everybody deals with, which is distractions. Distractions come in the form of fear, anxiety, stress, tiredness, and the illusion of choice. And everybody deals with it. So when people say, you don't understand me and my struggle, my this, my that, yeah, you're talking about a very specific scenario. You and I didn't grow up Siamese twins. So of course we have different scenarios and different interactions and different everything. But I've dealt with fear. I've dealt with anxiety. I've dealt with stress. I've dealt with tiredness. I've dealt with the illusion of choice. And it is very naive of people to think that those things don't exist. And they've existed for forever.
Right.
You think of cavemen. They woke up and they're like, will I be eaten today?
Yeah.
Whether they're being eaten by a predator or whether they're going to be doing some eating later because they kill a predator. To nowadays, waking up and saying, will I eat today? And are you going to be able to go and work and make money and be able to have food? Or are you just going to be super lazy and not cook anything or whatever? Right. So we deal with fear, anxiety, stress, tiredness, and the illusion of choice all the time. Now, people might be saying, well, those are pretty vague things. How do you know we all deal with them? Fear is some terrible belief that you think about yourself that you believe has a chance of coming true. AKA, you might have a fear of failure. Well, if I get involved with this and I fail, then people will see me as a failure. And therefore, fear, the whole thing about fear triggers a security response within you to say, don't do this, stay safe. And fear has a ton of energy behind it. You can have fear of failure, fear of heartbreak, fear of success.
Yes.
Well, what if I do this and I become really successful? Now I have 10x the amount of responsibility that gets thrown on my plate. And I don't know if I can deal with that. Right? So fear is that if there's anything that you possibly do, there's a potential consequence that could come to fruition. Here's the most important part to think about that. Could. It is not guaranteed that anything you do is going to have any negative consequence. The only thing you can control is your attitude and your effort. And if I guarantee you, if you control your attitude and your effort, and everybody's trying to increase their potential all the time. We're going to webinars, we're going on YouTube and learning a whole bunch of stuff. We're picking up things that we have no business even doing, but then somehow we learn them. We have relationships. Potential's covered. Just find a way to let that potential come out in play. So we talked about fear, anxiety. Anxiety is your brain's ability to forecast threat detection.
Yeah.
Right? What could happen today? What could happen tomorrow? What could happen 2 weeks from now? What could happen a month, a quarter, a year, whatever. It tries to forecast everything out, but only using the information you have right now. It doesn't know, it's trying to figure out what tomorrow will hold using today's information. And it causes you to be stressed the hell out.
Yes, so very true.
So anxiety comes from your brain constantly trying to forecast. The way that you fight it is you just be present.
Yes, there's a saying I love. It's from Lao Tzu, and he said, and I'm going to read it. It says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past.
Yes.
If you're anxious, you're living in the future. But if you're at peace, you're living in the present. And that's the one thing that you think of children. They always live in the present. Animals, pets, dogs, they always live in the present. It's always trying to forecast the future that creates so much anxiety. And looking back at the past, maybe you think you should have done something differently, that creates that level of depression. So learning consciously to enjoy who you are right now and to fathom into that space that is the only thing you can control anyway, is the now. You have control over nothing else.
Yeah, all you can do is experience what's going on right now and control your attitude and effort in the moment.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, here's how my attitude and effort's going to be tomorrow. No, there's too many things that could change between now and then. You can control your attitude and effort right here, right now, always. Yeah. So we talked about fear, anxiety, stress is the tension between who you are being and who you want to be. So this is when you are being inauthentic in order to appease something somewhere, or you're doing something and you feel like you are not being useful and you are not getting fulfillment from it. And a good way to think of it is stress is burnout, because people are like, oh, I'm just so stressed. Everybody's like, well, if you love what you're doing, you won't work a day in your life. What they're trying to say is, if you are doing something and you don't feel fulfilled, or you are doing something and you are having to put on a face every single day and you're like, I hate this work. I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of it. I don't feel like I'm being useful, and I'm being a toxic person in all of this. I have, and this is a parenting term, I have a poopy diaper every single day, right? I have just a bad attitude whenever I'm doing stuff.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, you will experience stress at a very high level, because you are just so far away from the person who you you can be, which is being a useful person, being a kind person, doing something that is meaningful to you. One thing that can help with this is reading a book called Ikigai. And Ikigai is a book that covers a concept of what is an amazing, fulfilling purpose. And it's this intersection of what you like, what you are really good at and passionate about, what the market needs, and what people will pay for. So the book is about understanding how to go through that. So that can help combat stress.
Yeah. No, that would be a good one for sure.
Yeah, and the book covers this group of people called the Super Centenarians, which is a group of people who live in, I believe, northern Japan, who on very frequent average times live to be like 120 years old or older. And it's because their quality of life is so high.
Yeah.
Tiredness. Tiredness is when you are simply doing too much and you are being unrealistic with what you're capable of doing. We all wake up with a certain number of units of energy every single day, depending on how we slept, depending on how we eat, how we train ourselves, how we do anything, right? You wake up with a certain amount of energy. If you are doing more than what your level of energy is capable of doing, you will be tired and you will make bad decisions. You will cut corners and you'll have a hairpin trigger with other people around you.
Yeah.
The illusion of choice is a great example here. Is in order to play football in the National Football League, you have to train your tail off. You have to go to college. You have to play, I believe, 2 years in college in order to go to the NFL. These are just rules that are a part of this. And if you want to go down that path, the illusion of choice is thinking you can go to the NFL without putting in hard work, without having and played college football and have proven yourself and have tape that proves that you can do this at a very high level.
Yeah.
And, you know, the whole, if you want to be a professional at something, put in 10,000 hours. That really goes into the illusion of choice. If you want to be successful at something, you have to put in the work. There are no shortcuts. Everybody who posts, here's one simple hack to make $20,000 on drop shipping a day. That person has spent 10,000 hours to come up with a strategy that allows them to make $10,000 a day.
There's no miracle. There's no miracle. You have to put in the work. I mean, things, when people say, hey, he had an overnight success. No, he had an overnight success that lasted 30 years, right? So you have to be realistic. Anyway, for the sake of time, Keegan.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I can go on forever.
No, you're fascinating. My God, what an amazing coach. And you bring so much inspiration and guidance. And I think it's so critical nowadays. So if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, I would say the best ways to get a hold of me, number one would be on LinkedIn. Come find me. Just look up Keegan LaMar on LinkedIn. Pretty active on there. And then another great way to get in touch with me, people are more than welcome to shoot me an email, keegan@tailoredtech.ai. Please feel free to shoot me an email with any questions that you might have. If you are curious about coaching, other stuff like that, you can either email there or, you know, go to LinkedIn or find me on lamarcoaching.com and check that out. People are more than welcome to do that. And I would say outside of that, one of the other things that I wind up having a lot of conversations with people about is when they're trying to navigate career changes or things that they would like to do. I love being of help to other people. So I'm a part of a lot of different networking groups, some with executives, some with athletes, some with all sorts of things. But I would love to help people be able to connect and be able to figure some things out. You know, while I'm not the person who's like, oh, I've got 100 jobs that need to be filled, the first 100 can blah, blah, blah. But I can help connect people to others who are probably in that space. So I know that's something that a lot of people find valuable, especially when things are a little tight. And so please feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions that you might have. And I'm always open to having a conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is great. Now people know how to get a hold of you, and I'm sure lots of them will, because you have such an insight on everything. And we can feel that you've been doing this for a while and that you have also experienced a lot. And when you have experienced a lot, it's much easier to speak about it in a way that can be easily understood, and you are doing just that. So thank you so much, Kegan. It was wonderful having you today. Just a pleasure to have you speak with me, and share everything that you had to share with my audience. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Catherine. I've always enjoyed these conversations.
All right. Well, everybody else, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kegan. Feel free to share his story with your own network. That's why we're here. We're here to help each other out. So share his story, repost the video everywhere. That would be wonderful. And thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.